The story begins with a married couple, John and Jane Smith, sitting through a therapy session with their marriage counselor. They're both very unhappy with their marriage of about 5 years, and even try to avoid some personal questions about it, so the therapist decides to ask them about the time when they first met. They reveal that they first met each other in Colombia, at a time when the police were interrogating tourists. Even though they were both traveling alone, John decided to help Jane by pretending that they were together when he saw her getting harassed by the officers. After that, they spent the rest of the evening together and even went to a night party. The following morning, Jane woke up surprised to see that John had already ordered breakfast for the two of them. She thought their time together would just be a one-time fling, but quickly realized that he wanted to spend more time with her. The two spent their day at a fair, where they both showed some strangely impressive shooting skills, while pretending that it's not that big of a deal. Soon, they started dating, and a very excited John told his best friend Eddie about how much he's in love with Jane when he went boxing in the gym. From what she told him, he knows that she works in tech and is very successful, but Eddie seems to think that he is taking things too fast. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Jane is mountain rock climbing when she tells her own close friend Jasmine about John, who she knows as a contractor in a construction company. Just like Eddie, Jasmine is a bit skeptical about how fast the couple is taking things, but it turns out that John and Jane have already made up their minds to get married. 5 or 6 years later, we see the two living together as husband and wife in a beautiful house in the suburbs. However, they only just get along with each other, and it appears that their relationship is strained. Everything about the marriage feels weird, and it's almost like they're competing with each other all the time. At night, a guilt-ridden John returns home, and Jane stares at him through the kitchen window, probably feeling that he's been cheating on her because of the lipstick stain on his collar. Later that night, Jane receives a strange call and immediately gets dressed, and before she leaves, she tells John that the emergency is a crashed server downtown. Shortly after she leaves the house, John also gets dressed and heads out. Sometime later, Jane arrives at a hotel, where she's escorted to a room by armed bodyguards. She walks into the room to meet a man, and all of a sudden, she takes off her coat to reveal the sexually provocative outfit underneath, before asking the man if he's ready to have some fun. Meanwhile, John goes to a bar and staggers into a room at the back like he's drunk. A group of men there are playing a game of poker, so they try to send him out, but when he shows them the fat wad of cash in his hand, they invite him to join before their absent friend returns. Not long after they start playing, their friend returns, and John shoots him on sight before killing everyone else in the room. While that's happening, the scene shifts back to the hotel room where Jane has taken up the role of a dominatrix as she tries the man up. Just when he thinks he's about to have the time of his life, she effortlessly snaps his neck, killing him in the process. Jane gets dressed before the bodyguards can even realize what's happened, and then escapes with a grappling hook by swinging down the building. Luckily, she returns home with a taxi and manages to get in without John seeing her. The next morning, we find out that John's tool shed is just a cover for his secret safe house, which contains his weapons and a huge stash of cash. At the same time, Jane opens up her own secret compartment of weapons hidden in the oven to take out a knife. Later, John goes to his construction company, which turns out to be a front for his hitman firm that Eddie helps him run. That day, John receives a contract to kill a prisoner called the Tank while he's transferring prisons. Meanwhile, Jane goes to work, and we learn that she has an entire floor in her company building, which is also an assassination firm. In a surprising twist, she also receives the contract to kill the Tank, and her superiors encourage her to get on the case as fast as she can to beat their competition. Later, Jane arrives at the location for the hit, and after setting up cameras and sensors for the target, she waits patiently for him to arrive. Just then, she sees an off-road car speeding through the desert, recklessly knocking down her traps and setup. It turns out that this rough driver is John, who's also coming to intercept the target. A pissed-off Jane sees him from afar, but doesn't recognize him, so she shoots him in an attempt to kill him. Thanks to John's bulletproof vest, he survives, and in annoyance, he blasts his shooter with a rocket launcher. In the ensuing commotion, the mines accidentally go off, and the target manages to escape. After the explosions, John inspects the area and finds a burnt computer, which he takes with him for further investigation. Afterward, he meets up with Eddie to tell him all about the incident. Meanwhile, Jane returns furiously to her office, demanding to know who the other guy was, so she asks her girls to find out his identity. Elsewhere, John takes the burnt computer to a tech expert, and after some digging, he's able to find a billing address that seems familiar to him. When he goes to the address, he's shocked to find out that his wife's name is on it. At the same time, Jane reviews the surveillance footage from the desert and notices something shocking. While the guy is peeing, he stomps his foot, and she recognizes this behavior as something that only one person does. Later that night, John carefully drives back home, scanning the entire place cautiously. He walks into the extremely silent house, but then Jane suddenly appears and invites him to dinner. The whole time, John is very nervous, and he even hides a knife in his jacket just in case. Jane tries to cut some of the food with a huge knife, but he quickly offers to help her handle it. At this point, it's clear that they already know something, so John drops a bottle of wine, hoping it breaks, but Jane catches it like a ninja by reflex, right before dropping it too when she realizes. The two rush out of the room, claiming that they're going to bring cleaning materials, but when John comes back out with his gun, Jane is already speeding out of the house with her car. He chases after her and runs through a shortcut to intercept her, but when he stands in front of the car, she runs him over and jumps out too before the car speeds into a bush. Later, John tells Eddie all about it, and the best friend claims that Jane knew all along and has been planning to hurt him for years. While that's happening, Jane also tells Jasmine what happened, and the latter suggests killing John. Determined to be one step ahead, Jane and her team return home to find out everything John has been hiding, and after they're done there, the oblivious husband returns to see that his secret safe house has been emptied. This annoys him, so he goes to Jane's office, only to find out that they've burnt all the evidence and evacuated the place before his arrival. Regardless, he keeps searching and finds a lead among the burnt pieces of paper. Using this information, he goes to Jane's new building and tries to sneak in through the elevator, but once again, she's one step ahead of him, so he disables it and locks him inside. John contacts her, so she threatens to blow up the elevator if he doesn't leave town. He challenges her to do it, and after much hesitation, she sets off the explosives on top of the elevator. However, she immediately regrets it, thinking that he's dead, not knowing that he's actually safe in another elevator. Later that night, she mourns him in a hotel, but her sobbing is interrupted when John suddenly joins her at the table. He reveals that he wants a divorce, and the two quietly go back and forth with banter, threatening to kill each other. Eventually, he suggests that they have a dance, and while they're at it, they secretly disarm each other too. John says something that offends her, and she storms out, but he knows that she's up to something. Sure enough, she suddenly creates a huge distraction with an explosion and blends in with the crowd to escape. That's about the same time he realizes that she left a ticking bomb in his pocket, but he manages to get rid of it before it explodes. As you'd expect, he's enraged by this, so he chases her again. He calls her phone while driving and threatens to kill her, but she doesn't think he means it. John then reveals that he truly loves her despite her profession, but she insinuates that he was just a cover for her all the while. They both arrive at the house at the same time, but Jane runs into the house and locks him outside. He goes around the house and gets in through the back door before taking out his gun from a secret compartment. A brutal gunfight ensues, and after wrecking the whole house, they come face to face, pointing their guns at each other. It's at this point that they realize they don't want to kill each other. They share a passionate kiss and make love until they're interrupted by their neighbors, who want what all the noise was about. The next morning, the newly reunited couple catch up and open up more to one another about their secrets, but just when things seem like they're all good, a grenade is thrown into the house. John and Jane hide in a safe place to arm themselves, and that's when we learn that they were both given 48 hours to kill each other. It turns out that their respective employers are now trying to kill them for disobeying. Another bomb flies in, and John kicks it away, but it rolls under a fuel tank, which causes the entire house to blow up. Thankfully, they survive and manage to escape with their neighbor's minivan. Meanwhile, Eddie receives a bounty offer for $400,000 to kill the couple, but he rejects it. Elsewhere, the couple drives away, confessing more secrets they have had since they first met, including the fact that Jane is an orphan and John never liked her cooking, but she just tells him that never even cooked, and that she even hired people to pose as her parents for the wedding. Their comedic confessions are interrupted when 3 black cars from their employers attack them from behind, so Jane takes the wheels while John shoots back at them. Afterward, they meet up with Eddie to explain the situation, and he confirms that their respective organizations have ordered a hit on them because 2 agents can't be married. Determined to save the marriage, they decide to kidnap the tank so they can use him to negotiate with their organizations. Mr. and Mrs. Smith carry out a smooth operation and successfully abduct the tank from where he was being held. John interrogates the hostage, who reveals that he's just bait used that the companies intended to use to get the couple to kill each other after finding out they were married. After realizing that the hostage was just a trick to make them fight each other, John finds a tracker on his belt. Unfortunately, before he can do anything about it, they're ambushed again. The couple hides to arm themselves and fight side by side against the enemies until they're victorious. The story ends with Mr. and Mrs. Smith meeting the marriage counselor again, and although they admit that it's been hard, they reveal that their marriage is thriving now.